Camus and the logic of the absurd. The absurd is arguably one of the most powerful and persistent philosophical concepts of the 20th century, and at its heart stands the figure of Albert Camus. Far from being a philosophy of despair, Camus' exploration of the absurd offers a surprisingly robust framework for living a life of meaning and value in a meaningless universe. It's not about giving up, it's about starting over with radical honesty. The genesis of the absurd, a deep dive into the divorce. Camus defines the absurd not as an inherent quality of the world, nor as a psychological state within humanity, but as the fundamental divorce between the two. The world, in its vast, indifferent, and silent entirety, simply is. It is governed by physical laws, lacking any inherent purpose or divine blueprint for humanity. Conversely, humanity possesses an irresistible, deeply ingrained hunger for meaning, unity, and clarity. We yearn for answers to the big why questions. Why are we here? What is the point of suffering? What happens after death? The tragedy, or the comic irony, depending on your mood, is that the universe will never provide those answers. It offers the unreasonable silence of the world. The absurd is born in that chasm, in the agonizing tension between our demand for meaning and the universe's absolute refusal to supply it. It is not discovered in moments of great existential crisis alone, but rather in the mundane, in the weary routine of a Tuesday morning when the realization hits. The why arises, and everything begins in that weariness tinged with astonishment. Bomb, the three responses to the absurd: philosophical suicide, hope, and revolt. Once the individual acknowledges this painful, fundamental truth, that life is inherently meaningless, Camus posits three primary ways they might attempt to resolve the tension, only one of which he advocates. 1. Philosophical suicide, the leap of faith. This is the attempt to destroy the awareness of the absurd by adopting a system of belief that elevates one side of the conflict. Often, this takes the form of religious or metaphysical hope, a leap of faith. By claiming a transcendental purpose, a life after death, or a divine plan, the individual denies the world's fundamental silence. They resolve the divorce by annihilating the absurd through the illusion of certainty. For Camus, this is a form of philosophical escape, a trick that compromises intellectual integrity. It's not about whether a God exists. It's about whether you choose a convenient answer over the honest confrontation with the lack of one. 2. Physical suicide, the simplest escape. The direct and perhaps most logical response to the realization that life has no purpose is to end it. If all is meaningless, why endure the struggle? Camus dismisses this, too, as an escape. He states, in his famous opening to The Myth of Sisyphus, that judging whether life is worth living is the fundamental question of philosophy. Yet suicide merely abolishes the individual and the problem they embody. It is the ultimate form of surrender, and a crucial premise of the absurd life is that it must be lived and confronted. 3. The absurd revolt, the noble acceptance. This is the only viable path. Revolt is not a violent uprising against the world, but a constant, conscious confrontation with the absurd. It is the decision to maintain the tension, to acknowledge the lack of meaning without giving up the escape routes and without taking the escape routes. The revolt is the individual saying, "I know the world is meaningless, Yet I will strive to live, to create, and to experience with full lucidity. It involves three key commitments. Revolt, the uprising, a refusal to be reconciled with the finality of death and the silence of the universe. It is a persistent act of defiance. Freedom, the absence of chains. Since there is no preordained meaning, there is no preordained morality or destiny. The absurd man is free from the constraints of absolute truth, religious dogma, or ultimate purpose. Passion, the quantity of experiences. Since the future is meaningless and there is only a glorious present, the absurd man chooses to live life to the fullest, focusing on the sheer quantity and intensity of earthly experiences. C. Sisyphus, the icon of absurd logic. Camus immortalizes this logic in the figure of Sisyphus, the mythical Greek king condemned to endlessly push a massive boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down. This task is the definition of futile, exhausting, and meaningless, the perfect metaphor for the human condition as viewed through the lens of the absurd. However, Camus transforms Sisyphus from a pitiable victim into the ultimate absurd hero. The moment of true philosophical triumph, he argues, is the moment Sisyphus turns around at the peak and walks back down the mountain. In that brief respite, Sisyphus is superior to his fate. He is conscious of the futility of his task. He knows the rock will roll down, and he still chooses to walk back down to meet it. His fate belongs to him. His rock is his thing. The logic is simple yet profound. Meaning is not found. It is created through the act of living despite the knowledge of futility. Sisyphus's happiness comes from his lucidity, his defiance, and his ownership of his meaningless existence. He is happy not because he has conquered the gods, but because his scorn for them and his full awareness of his lot make his struggle sufficient unto itself. C. Art and morality. Art, for Camus, is one of the most vital forms of absurd revolt. The artist creates a world of coherence, meaning, and unity within their world, knowing full well that the external world lacks it. A novel, a play, or a painting is a testament to the human spirit's ability to impose order on chaos. It is not an escape from reality, but a confrontation with it, a fleeting moment of unity that is immediately destroyed and then recreated. Absurd art is therefore not meant to offer comfort or solve the problem. It is meant to describe and amplify the tension of the human condition. Absurd morality. Since the absurd man rejects the notion of eternal reward or punishment, his ethical framework must be built on entirely different ground. Morality is no longer dictated by divine law, but by human solidarity and the love of this life. If the world is all we have, then the suffering of others is an immediate and tangible concern. The absurd man acts out of a commitment to justice and a defense of humanity simply because they are fellow rebels against the silence of the universe. It is a morality rooted in the immediate consequence of revolt. It is morality without justification, done purely for the love of the current moment and the camaraderie of the absurd journey. Star, the final takeaway, embracing the richness of absence. The true triumph of Camus' philosophy is its ability to convert a seemingly negative realization into a radical affirmation of life. The logic of the absurd is the ultimate challenge. If the universe grants you no meaning, then every moment, every experience, and every human connection you forge becomes infinitely more precious because it is all you will ever have. It demands a life of passion, lucidity, and conscious creation, not in spite of meaninglessness, precisely because of it. The absurd does not kill hope. It simply redefines it, focusing it on the here and now. The true measure of a person is their capacity to live authentically and passionately, all while carrying the full weight of the world's indifference. If this deep dive into Camus' powerful ideas struck a chord, think about how the absurd plays out in your own life. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel for more philosophical adventures, and give this video a big thumbs up if you found Sisyphus' struggle inspiring.